Hi again, listeners, and welcome to the latest episode of the Fantasy Animation Podcast with me, Chris Holliday.
And me, Alex Sargent.
Today's episode is, I guess, slightly more exploratory. It's a conversation in and around what we have termed as of about 3 minutes ago, the immersive live experiences, maybe taking in kind of concerts, thinking about concerts where there is maybe an animated embellishment, so there might be a turn to huge video walls, LED technology, spectacle, contemplation, aura, his ears are pricked up, but within the context, I think, and I'm also interested in live holography as well, and sort of we've done a previous episode on Aber Voyage and thinking about, I guess, digital posthumous concert performances. So I think the idea of the concert experience and particularly questions of immersion are something that we will probe and think about with regards to space and virtual space and virtual environments. So yeah, going to be a bit of an exploratory one. Are we delving into something specific? Or?
Well, I think we're going to use something called because we're British, we don't know about this until 5 minutes ago, but I think American listeners will be familiar with the Las Vegas Sphere and the kind of various shows that have been going on there. But we're using it really as a case study to talk more broadly about this phenomenon of the immersive live experience. So this could be anything from going to see kind of hologrammatic displays of bands, which is happening more and more and more, to actually just like going to a planetarium and kind of taking in the shows there. But all of these things, as we're going to hopefully try and play with the next hour, will require an element of animation to make them come true and come to life, even if they are live. And let's see, but I would argue they also require an element of fantasy, in that these are supposedly live experiences with a medium that is inherently not live, right? If we're talking back to the kind of definitions of frame by frame and optical illusions and things like that. So that's all going to be fun to explore, I think.
Yes. I think it's going to be an intriguing one, and so we are delighted, I think, as we wade through. I suppose the analogy is toys, having a little play with some of the stuff that the immersive live experience maybe prompts. So it's not just Alex and I. We're delighted to be joined by Tim Jones, who is Associate Professor and Director of the Academic Media Centre at Robert Morris University. Tim's research interests include animation production culture, inclusive education, and immersion. Listeners might remember a very short discussion we had with Tim a few years ago, actually, at the very start of the podcast at Seattle. So we're delighted to welcome him back for that was the teaser, and this is the feature length. Tim's work appears in Animation and Interdisciplinary Journal, Animation and Advertising, Animation Practice, Process and Production, Animation Studies Journal, and Reconceptualizing Film Policies. He is the treasurer of the Society for Animation Studies and co-hosts a podcast, the Spirited Animation Podcast,
with Pastor Aaron Jones, my better half.
Excellent. So Tim, thank you very much for joining us to talk through this sort of knotty, complex subject.
Thank you for having me. And it's I hope this isn't a session where we just radically agree with each other about things, because my ears pricked up when you said aura as well.
Right, okay.
Fine, well, I don't think Alex has agreed with anybody, actually.
I try not to. Yes, so, yeah, Tim, I guess as the opening salvo, let's get into this, is that, where did you first become interested in this phenomenon of the immersive live experience? When did you come across it? Have you got a kind of anecdotal example of you engaging with some of this stuff, and why do you find it interesting as an animation scholar in particular?
Well, it's a very happy thing and sort of a sad thing at the same time. I come into animation studies through an education in American avant-garde cinema. So I was a student at the University of Colorado in the year 2000. Oddly enough, right after the South Park guys were there, but not doing South Park stuff. Was there studying with Stan Brakhage and Phil Solomon, who were very interested in this, in creating altered states. And Brakhage famously was pushing on his eyeball to see what colors he could produce, and then creating hand-painted films on towards the end on IMAX. With very, very toxic painting, which ultimately killed him, I'm afraid. But this idea of creating fantastic spaces and visual experiences was my introduction to animation as a scholar. And then I went and worked for a military contracting University of Southern California, trying to build a holodeck. So there was this idea of using this for the highest level sort of aesthetic principles, and then using it for what, using immersion for what the money and paying for it is doing. And then I sort of put that aside for a really long time and looked at industry studies. Then our colleague, who we've sadly lost, Millie Young, started working on painterly immersion.
Yeah.
And for me, that just turned this light bulb on, that she had found a way to take this technology that I was very familiar with and this tradition of fine art painterly practice and combine the two. And then tragically died just as she was really hitting her stride with being this practice. And so that sort of as a result of that, I've been working on that since then. And that's sort of how I came into it.
Okay, interesting. So let's start basic for people who perhaps haven't engaged with this. I'm sure people will have at least heard of, you know, the increasing amounts of examples of this kind of thing, this kind of, you know, whether it be, as you say, these kind of, you know, famous examples of kind of holograms of actors. We did an episode on, as Chris said, ABBA Voyage, which is a London equivalent of this kind of thing. But actually, this is a very quite ubiquitous experience, right? It can happen in almost every town or city in certainly Europe and the United States, right? But it's using various new kind of immersive technologies. Many of them are powered by at least some form of computer-generated imagery, animation, for want of a better term, to create.
He says begrudgingly.
Well, you know,
For want of the best term to describe it.
I forgot that I'm surrounded by animation scholars. I should keep my. But yeah, no, quite exactly right. But quite often they're not necessarily described in those terms. I guess was my caveats to that. Being used to create a sensation of liveness, a sensation of being saturated or surrounding or engulfed by media to create certain, it's that kind of sense of that live experience. So have you got some first-hand experience? Which ones have you particularly engaged with? Why were you particularly interested in focusing on, as a case study to explore this on the Las Vegas sphere as a good example of this?
So for me, as a student who emerged out through this several generations of technology and attempting to create virtual reality, I tell my students that I never had a virtual boy, but I did try it. One of my rich friends had one, right? And it was terrible. And they think of that something as being something from the before times, from ancient history of the 1980s and 90s. And then working with people like Palmer Luckey very, very briefly, who created Oculus at USC at the same time I was there.
Okay.
So I was around all of this sort of stuff, but for me, I have a very hard time being in virtual reality for very long. That's something that always sort of happens. But being someone who loves creating presence, a sense of being placed somewhere else in real or virtual space, I wanted ways of still doing that. And the dome, what we call full dome, does that. It's also something that it's a collective experience more than a lot of VR experiences are. And that goes back to it's why so often this is concerts. So yeah, I think I would point it to these experiences of being in a room or of arena with lots and lots of people enjoying something, puts you in a form where you are primed to have an emotional experience, and you add this animated content onto it.
Sure.
So yeah, I would mostly point to concerts as being the way that I would like to talk about this. Emotionally fraught live experiences, concerts, sporting events, all those things.
Yeah.
I guess my impossible question of the episode is coming now then. So is this a new or old?
I was also going to ask
Okay, yeah.
an impossible, but yeah.
Yeah, is this a new or old phenomenon? So, because it seems like part of it can be traced back to, like, you know, light shows and you know, the kind of things that have been at least around for nearly a century or more so. But there also seems to be this kind of movement of like more and more of these sort of things existing.
Well, this is when you realize the error of your ways of mentioning Cave of Forgotten Dreams before we turned on the microphone. This is as old as humanity, isn't it?
Okay.
one of the things I loved discovering when I started looking at dome experiences is outside of animation studies, art historians talk about the dome being a recreation of the tent, which is a recreation of a cave. This idea of dome displays being based on cathedrals. So when they opened the Las Vegas Sphere, one of the first things they put on it was an image of the Pantheon in Rome, the oculus of the... So there is a very intentional through line from cave art to cathedral to dome experience by way of the planetarium.
Yeah.
And I think certainly people who are promoting these experiences want us to think of this as being an ancient human urge.
So what's new about it then?
We have the incredible processing power and the electrical grid to support it, I think, is probably what happened.
Yes. No, I was just going to say, because I was interested in the lineage and I was wondering whether something like the Sphere is the culmination of the last 10, 15 years of shifts within, let's say, live music performance towards, yes, more elaborate. And a colleague, Matt Nichols, has written about stage design, giant video screens, laser shows that go back to Pink Floyd's The Wall from the early 80s, U2's Zoo TV, and obviously U2 have a link to the Sphere, and then into the 10s and 20s where you have LED technology, visual effects software, and a whole range of different kinds of what he calls these embellishments to live performance, whether it's Pet Shop Boys, whether it's kind of Fatboy Slim's use of motion graphics, manipulated live action footage, and even, we're talking not long after Oasis is reforming, and a band that you wouldn't necessarily think of a band that you wouldn't necessarily tie to these kinds of technologies, but the back projections of there's certainly the concerts in the early 2000s are not like they are now. There are these quite elaborate animated effects, but also the live footage is being kind of animated in real time. So there's the kind of the real timeness of all of this. So I suppose, and of course the stuff that I said around not just these kinds of effects, but also posthumous performance and holography and all this kind of stuff. So it seems like this is both culminating the last 10, 15 years of those kinds of technologies, whilst also going right back to, Lawrence Napper on the podcast before, who kind of says, I remember him telling me once, I'm just annoyed that people start talking about immersion. He's like, cinema's always been immersive since the 1910s, and this is so I'm just trying to get my head around not necessarily where the starting point is, but this seems like a culmination of lots of different things.
I think you're right about that. There's very much a sense that the live performance part of that isn't new. Planetarians, which I learned through becoming part of this project, that's what planetarium operators call themselves, are planetarians.
Okay.
Right. They live performed the movement of stars by moving little lights mechanically across the dome above. Like, those weren't projected from a projector, like a film projector. They're projected from a ball with holes cut in it. So that was essentially an optical toy performance.
Yeah.
The same thing in the 1970s. You had people like Ivan Dreyer, who did Laserium, which was manually operated laser projectors that were performed as if it were a musical instrument. And I think just enough time has gone by that people have forgotten those kinds of performance, and now we have invented these new tools that allow us to do them so much bigger and so much more algorithmically.
Yeah. Well, and also even a couple of decades before that, I'm thinking obviously people like Vicky Smith writing on expanded cinema, like expanded animation and the use of projection, and also obligatory Bond reference, the opening titles, I think it's of both From Russia with Love and Goldfinger.
Oh yeah.
Involve the woman as screen, kind of bodies being projected onto. So there's all of these different sort of, at the same time the Sphere is different to all of what this is. But but I was also thinking of like Pepper's Ghost, these live stage effects using mirrors and projections and this kind of spectral quality to
I'm glad that I'm here, because
we're glad that you're here.
The idea of coming on the fantasy animation I was really wondering in my head how long we would be talking before we would talk about magic and ghosts.
Yeah.
Because I think you just made everyone who does this work very, very happy. Because I think that is that's one of the show things I think a lot of the people who work in this space put themselves in that tradition of being like magicians.
Like like the kind of staging of magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I guess my only final question then on why these seem to be a thing that's worth talking about now is, I guess, being not that much of a technologist in terms of my approach to history, is there some sort of cultural need or desire for these kinds of things? We now have the technology to make them far more photorealistic, far more, I don't know, that we can start using words that we'll probably have to critique and think about a little bit, far more quote unquote immersive.
Yeah.
So we have these technologies, but my kind of view of history tends to be we only really have people only really invent technologies for the things that the society needs rather than the other way around. And there's certainly this narrative, whether it's true or not, that seems to be in the kind of popular press, is that these things are like cropping up everywhere and there's this new thing that everyone's loving. So do you have any speculative thoughts or more informed thoughts on what it is about 2025 or the last couple of years or the last decade or so that means we want or need these kind of these immersive live experiences?
You have to sort of take it. You have to make us feel sad, don't we? Because we just talk about how much I love these things. My pocketbook, my bank account doesn't love these things. And I think that's why we have them.
Sure.
Because the
So why do we want to pay for them then? It's probably the thing.
Well, I think what we're in a situation is concerts have gotten so much more expensive, right? And live experiences, the cost of going to a sports game. I mean obviously this is, I'm talking in the UK, but like, the cost of an NFL game in the United States is hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we've made it so performers musicians have to tour to make money, right? And these kinds of things we're making these experiences have to get bigger and bigger and more expensive. So this is something I think is happening because I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg situation. We make these shows and live experiences grander and grander and grander to justify to the audience why they were already paying so much more.
Okay.
I see. Yeah.
So I think this is taking something that I think is a really joyful, like, we have these artistic possibilities of creating these huge images and these incredible transcendent experiences. And then we go like, oh, well, we're actually just doing it so we can extract more money from you.
So like, so we're talking about the Las Vegas Sphere, or we're going to kind of use that as our linchpin for this conversation. One of the most famous examples of that is a U2 live concert experience.
Yeah.
So is your suggestion there that going to see U2 is now prohibitively expensive, so it is easier, cheaper, more desirable to go and see a U2 live concert experience in Las Vegas as an alternative? Or are you suggesting?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think U2 certainly preferred to do a 3-month. All these artists, we see so many artists doing residencies in these places rather than traveling because they have the clout to say, I'm not going to do what I'm not doing it anymore. Elton John saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. Taylor Swift saying, I'm only going to do this right now. So the artists have the clout to say, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And then I guess they're working out the thing that's like, we have the product that people are literally flying across continents to experience. So once you put that kind of outlay out, you're talking about experiences that are hugely expensive, and therefore people are wanting a lot for their money.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to ask some questions that I might edit out because it might maybe look stupid, which actually tomorrow's. Hello, everyone. I'm going to leave it in. So you two are not part of this performance. Are they live in?
They're live, yeah.
Oh, they're live in the building, and then the immersive.
It's around. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, right. So that's kind of.
That's a very, very good question, actually. So leave it in, yeah.
So that's interesting. So that's almost like a kind of live concert equivalent of, like, I don't know, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club, right? In that you have to come to Las Vegas to see a live concert. We can't come to you. Just like the Beatles didn't like touring anymore, so they made Sgt. Pepper's, right?
Right.
So it's a kind of, but to justify you flying to Vegas rather than us flying to you, we're going to make the experience.
And this allows us as animation scholars to talk about things that like I think this is coming from Cirque du Soleil going to Las Vegas and becoming a thing there, which of course is also an animated experience in a very big way with projection mapping and all the things you talked about.
Yes.
So that's very different from, say, like, you know, quite a lot of cinemas will show live concerts. I mean, they have done since they've been around, but like that is people who can't go to the concert.
Or National Theatre.
Yeah. This is, we're not going to come to you, but we'll give you something to justify you coming to us.
And we're going to make it as difficult as possible to recreate that experience because it's immersive.
Yeah.
You can't, obviously you can find videos of these concerts on YouTube and other things, but they don't do it justice because it's not in the same format.
So I have two things. One is back to this question of the kind of cultural there's the technological determinist narrative of we now have the technology to do this. There is the narrative of we're almost reverse we're giving you the rationale after the fact. You know it's expensive, so we might as well make it really expensive and shit. And then the other thing, and I don't know whether we talked about this in the podcast, but also this is a bit flimsy, but it's a sort of kind of post-COVID, like the relationship between COVID and crowds and gatherings. And it's COVID, it's Trump's inauguration photo, it's going back early 2000s, it's crowd software, and you know we're fascinated by crowds. It's going back to mass ornament. It's sort of, we like clusters and so there's something, and Erica Balsam at King's has written, I think I've mentioned this before, that the crowd is dead, long live the crowd, and there's the spectacle of it, but there's also I do remember that a Stereophonics gig in the UK was considered a super spreader event. So musical concerts, and it's the regathering. And so I'm just wondering if it's over the last couple of years as well, we're trying to give you more bang for your buck on the basis of we're now getting together again. And so there's that kind of thing. But going back to what you said about the not coming to, they're not going to come to us. So we have to go to Stratford. We have to go to, and obviously this is Aura, is it not? Like the kind of site specific to make him all happy. Is this not a version of you have to go to Stratford? This abattoir will not come to you. It's not the traveling circus. And you have to go to Las Vegas to see this particular show. So I'm just wondering and you mentioned about kind of recreation. So that sort of site specific experience that cannot be replicated. I can watch the National Theatre, I can watch a live play streamed on YouTube, but of course I'm not there. So I'm just wondering, is the ears pricking up with regards to Aura with all of this conversation?
For the person of the listener, that question was directed at me. So, but my answer is yes. But I reckon, Tim, we disagree, or are you buying that?
No, I think I love coming on podcasts and disagreeing with people and usually losing arguments.
I'll leave you to it then. You two.
But actually, I think that's certainly the intent. Whether or not that's something that will last, I think, is the interesting question.
I think that's an interesting question. And the other interesting question is whether that's a good thing or not, is the other interesting question. Because
or as intent that you have to be here at a specific time.
Whether that auratic effect, I mean, we're citing Walter Benjamin, listeners.
Well, we've done a footnote at Aura.
See previous footnote, but
Full
we'll
details.
trip over that. The Benjamin piece is famously unsure.
Just define Aura.
Unsure whether Aura's good or bad. Even when he's writing. So I'm doing the thought experiment: is this good that Aura is back? I mean, in that piece, it's widely read that Aura is gone and long live its demise.
Yeah,
it's a bit more complicated than that, I think.
Yeah,
the way it kind of plays out in that piece. So I guess I'm trying to work out whether.
Well, isn't it that Aura is not withered by mechanical reproduction in the way that he would say it? Here we're saying that Aura is exacerbated by technological reproduction.
Yeah,
because it's so spectacular.
But he would say Aura was a bad thing.
Yeah.
So is Aura, is the return of Aura and these kind of site-specific intents, you're already, as you said, Tim, you're already there, ready to kind of passively take in the kind of ritualistic experience. You're comparing it to temples, you're comparing it to the Roman pantheon, like these kind of ritualistic experiences. Is that a democratic thing, or is that something that should be, pushed against as all good Marxists like he push against?
That it makes it open. It opens out art to the
when Charlie Chaplin was unerratic, and that was good because it was like we all can just sort of chill out and
Yeah.
consume and debate and engage with the art. Art can become political rather than being kind of trenched from it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. I think there is a very clear sense that it isn't equally accessible. It is specifically a premium, a luxury experience in trying to take these locations are trying to take themselves and become global venues for culture. You know, it's just so bizarre to think of Las Vegas that way, but it's certainly that's what they're.
I think to describe Las Vegas as a global venue of culture is entirely accurate.
It is, yeah, and that's I think the pilgrimage word I think you used is frightening because it is accurate. So there are the people who are able to consume these kinds of experiences regularly, and it's not necessarily because of it's not necessarily only because of wealth, but the ability to go and follow concerts and things like that requires all kinds of lifestyle choices, right?
Sure.
And I think it's not surprising that it's bands like U2 and Fish and Dead and Company, formerly Grateful Dead, that are choosing to do this because they have fans who will follow them. Mm-hmm. But if it is something that people are going to have be that expensive, it is a pilgrimage to do once.
Yeah.
And then it becomes really scary that these venues are like churches and like temples, but real temples and real religions are noticing that this is a neat thing to do and building this kind of experience into things like the Temple of Vedic Consciousness in India, which is a planetarium, a giant cosmology of Krishna consciousness. They're building these giant experiences to be pilgrimage sites. So it's come full circle from something that's like a temple of consumerism to being an actual temple again.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what to do with that, but I'll
Be afraid, be very afraid.
Yeah.
What's that Is it the Krakauer essay about the?
You're really going to tick off all the germs.
No, I'm just.
No, we are, because I want to talk about Habermas in a minute. So
I thought you. Yeah, it was the public. What's the Krakauer one about? Maybe it's not Krakauer. It's the. Or maybe it's Benjamin. I can't remember. The sort of the picture palaces. The sort of with the columns and they're designed in a particular way to give you a sense, like the kind of class. They're giving you this cult of distraction.
yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Probably. I think
It's the cult. It's something. There's something around the publican perception, and I like the idea of Brackage prodding his eye and to get into these, as you said, altered states, and whether there's a kind of, distraction that we are. I think it's correct. How could this be? We haven't taught film theory 1 for about 10 years, but it's the way that the kind of they're designed to look like these, incredible spaces, and the cinema is trying to. There's a kind of class. So the pilgrimage thing. I think in that these shows are touring, and you can't follow them, you can't see them, you can't get the T-shirt and follow them on the date. You go to this place. Yeah, I think it's
over a limited period of time.
Over a limited that residency. Yeah,
I'm going to come back to.
I think it's health. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to try and offer a defense of some of this because we're going to get grumpy for a few minutes. But I think to stay grumpy, the other thing to add to that is the kind of the weird hyper-real falsity of it, right? So, Las Vegas is a perfect place for it because Las Vegas is basically that already, right? The whole spectacle of Vegas is, hey, it's Venice, it's not Venice. It's Paris, it's not Paris. It's the New York skyline, it's not. I mean, cards on the table. I think Las Vegas is pretty much hell on earth, but that happens to be my opinion. But it's certainly, even love it or hate it, that's what it is, isn't it? It's this fakery in a desert where all the world is not there but there, right? And so it completely makes sense that this kind of sensorium exists in Las Vegas, because that's kind of what Vegas is. That's what the Strip is, isn't it? Walk up and down the Strip, you're getting a 3D immersive live experience, as we've sort of already dictated. So is the fake, I'm using the word fake, but that's not really the right word, but is the lack of realness, is the gap between the real and the non-real an important part of this aesthetic to make it work?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think
it looks so much like it.
What is so strange is that the sort of institutional history of this, of these large scale cinemas. I think so many of us in animation studies and film studies have this experience as a kid of going to see a large format film at a science museum,
Yeah.
being really struck by it, and that has this kind of this pedagogical, like, you must care for planet Earth, or global warming is coming, kind of thing that a lot of us grew up with, and I think this has that in it.
Okay.
That U2, when they half of the animated content in their set was all about climate change, species, habitat destruction, using all of this kind of documentary mode strategies. And then the next day, if you stuck around and went to see another show, you see Darren Aronofsky's Postcard from Earth, which is claiming to be live action, shot with a huge, like, the largest cinema camera ever created, and it's claiming to be as real as real. Like, it's not claiming to be a documentary, but it's claiming to be a large format postcard of real dome imagery from Earth. So it's claiming to be real, which is really makes me very grumpy.
But the U2 stuff is not claiming to be real. It's meant to be looked at in a kind of, wow, it looks so real.
It's claiming to be live,
Yeah. Okay.
and that's not the same.
No. Well, in the same, I guess, like, to try and unpack it for me, someone hasn't seen it, you can see a live replica of the Eiffel Tower on the Las Vegas Strip, and that's there, and it is there, but it's obviously not. It's not the real Eiffel Tower. It looks a hell of a lot like it, and it's built very much like it. But you're obviously not supposed to think, my God, I'm in Paris. Like, when you walk through that mall in the Venetian and there's gondolas and a starry sky, you're supposed to recognize, it's the Eisenstein thing, right? I know very well, but so is that what's going on with the U2 thing?
Exactly. So there's and this is a podcast, so you can't see my incredibly appropriate hand gestures. The party trick of the Sphere Las Vegas, as they want you to call it, is that during a concert, when U2 did it and Dead and Company did it as well, there is the party trick of opening up the Sphere as if it was like a telescope.
Yeah.
And they open it up in the case of U2 for when they're playing Atomic City, because Las Vegas is the atomic city. So you see, after they open up the Sphere, the skyline of Las Vegas outside. But you're not seeing it. You're seeing it ILM created, animated.
So it's not a live feed.
It's not a live feed. It's animation, and it's also playing backwards as they dismantle Las Vegas, and it goes back to being a desert. And then same thing with Dead and Company. They open up the Sphere, and you see Haight-Ashbury, where they come, and then they do the Eames Power of 10 thing, and they go out into space and come back again. Ostensibly live action. Yeah. It's not. It's animated. It's a nice piece of animation, but no one thinks that they moved this giant skyscraper to San Francisco while you were going in and taking your seats, but they're still doing the thing.
Yes, and that links to what you're saying about them identifying as being in the tradition of magic shows and things like that, like the rabbit's coming out of the hat, but obviously it isn't. Okay, but the Aronofsky thing, Postcard from Earth, isn't doing that. It's kind of concealing rather than kind of.
It has this wonderfully hokey framing device of these animated people landing on a new planet, and then being woken up by the AI telling them, this is why you're on this new planet. And here's a postcard from the planet you came from. Ostensibly this, ultra high definition, big sky camera. Here's dancers in Istanbul. Here's, in a very Koyaanisqatsi kind of way. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
So imagine that on a spherical screen. The same. This is where you came from, and that has this extreme pretenses to documentary.
But why isn't it documentary then? To ask the stupid question.
I mean, so there's certainly the claim that it's shot on this huge camera, and they had all these promotional pictures of them putting this camera in under the sea and on a helicopter and things like that, and go, this is the largest single sensor indexically capturing what this fisheye lens is seeing. And then you remember, like, oh, it's really, really hard to cut this. So every time they need to cut, they need to place the previous thing somewhere else. So it's heavily composited.
Okay.
And I think part of that's probably why animation scholars and VR people going to see this are the worst, because we sit there with this experience of transference going, I see I see what they're doing. And like, I'm not fooled by this. But I think there's a whole technological mechanism of how you maintain this illusion of flying through space for all that time.
Okay.
Without making people sick. You have to cut, you have to manipulate the image a huge amount.
Okay. So in a way, we've used this analogy before with William Brown's work on super cinema.
Yeah.
We've got one example of a Superman and one example of a Clark Kent there, declaring its superness and it's hiding its superness, but they're both super.
That's a very good way of describing it, I think.
With William Brown, not me, but
Yeah. Some special effects are like Superman, but they pretend to be Clark Kent all of the time. So computers can do these incredible things, but they look like live action. They try and hide the seams, whereas Bruce Wayne is
it's
normal, pretending to be super, which is
It's the thing they're doing. It's the Kill Bill speech, isn't it? You know, Batman. Bruce Wayne is the real person. Batman's his kind of fictional alter ego. He's pretending to be Batman, but Superman is pretending to be Clark Kent. And most cinema is digital, but it's pretending to be, or animated, but it's pretending to be Clark Kent, or whatever the right way around of that is.
Yeah.
Lost in my own metaphor.
No, it's right.
So that's interesting, because then we've got different degrees of whatever this liveness of the experience is. One of them is a liveness that can't possibly be live, but the thrill is the kind of magic show quality of it feels so live, but. And another one is, it is live, or it is indexical, it is linked to this kind of moment in time, even though the moment in time never existed. But both of them are creating this, oh my God, kind of, here in the moment. And that is, if we're going back to aura, the here and now is so important to the aura, that kind of sense of the here and now. That is, I guess, where we could transition to thinking about whether this is necessarily a completely, evil enterprise, in the sense that that here and now is, this is where I wanted to mention Habermas, is that there's this whole if aura was bad in 1932 or whenever he wrote one of the drafts of whatever it is, I'm not a Benjamin scholar.
Yeah.
If aura was bad then, if it's bad now, we've got to have a whole different engagement with what the public and the private mean now, in the sense that, I don't really buy this idea that a lot of the kind of Frankfurt scholars seem to be suggesting, which is that we shouldn't be, this cult of distraction. If we weren't getting distracted all the time, we'd be sitting in like coffee houses talking about politics and really getting good stuff done. It's like, no, you would. Or I'm not quite sure that's helpful anyway. The kind of bourgeois approach. So there's, was that ever helpful anyway? And then there's when the public is in such retreats, the idea of public space is in such retreat, when everything is privatized experientially, where even sitting on the tube is now a private space. If you look at everyone's on their phone, everyone's got their headphones in, everyone's turned a public space into a private space where there is no intersubjective dialogue. There's just...
Well, it's also a workspace, isn't it? I can't remember the writer, but a student was writing about first, second, and third spaces. You have the work, you have the home, 1, 2, and then the third is like coffee shops, which are now becoming like first spaces or places of leisure now becoming places of work. So on the tube, as because of technology, so they are private spaces, but they're also work. You can start work on the tube.
Sure, we can go down that route if you.
No, I was just thinking about.
I was more thinking about just this idea that the public is a place where you are required to engage with different agencies, and the forum, the agora, whatever kind of romanticized vision of the public.
Well, yeah, it's a question of scale, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I maybe draw some comfort from that we look like we're recreating a spectacle conversation where that didn't work. The idea of saying that you have to experience the roadshow cinema, you have to experience it in in Cinerama, right? That ultimately didn't work. I'm not saying that television was better than that, but I think I take comfort in the notion that these collective experiences are likely to get cheaper. I mean, we have a $4,000 dome at my university that's inflatable, and the students love getting into it and watching things together. It's a germ magnet because it's recirculating air, so that's a challenge in a COVID environment. But the idea of having immersive experiences together definitely doesn't require Las Vegas Sphere to do. So that makes me feel a lot better, this idea that collective immersive experiences, especially ones that have an element of live performance in them, could be really pro-social, could be really good for us.
Yeah.
I just hope it isn't only this one thing.
Yeah, that's where I think I'm with you as well. As I think there is a need for collectivity. You know, we're not a very collective society. Certainly, Western Europe and America. Westernized world, whatever that means. We're not a collective society. Even the spaces where we are forced to be together, we are rarely engaging. It's a collective. What's the analogy? People go, "Oh, I've come home. Oh, you were late. I know I was stuck in traffic." And you weren't stuck in traffic. You were the traffic. You are part of the traffic. But you don't feel like that because it's your car and you're playing your radio and you're sitting there and you're phoning the people you want to phone, or you're not phoning anyone, but it's your space. So you've turned a public space into a private space. These kind of collective experiences, and even like cinema, just watching a film in an auditorium.
This is why I was thinking about Cult of Distraction, because the stuff around Krakow, because I googled it, obviously, characterizes these picture houses, the spiritual godlike, specifically calling people to go to them, a community of worshippers. So again, this is part of that question of the genealogy. Are these collective experiences the intensified version of?
Well, maybe, but I guess my retort would be in 2025, maybe worrying about whether these collective experiences are suitably critical or not is a luxury we can't actually.
Or the question is, are cinemas not like this anymore? And these are the new ways that we should theorize cult distraction, sort of thing. Do you see what I mean? Like the cinema is no longer this kind of place.
Yeah, I don't know if I go. I don't know. What do you?
No, I'm just.
I think that "yeah" is a very. I will second the "yeah."
That should be like a buzzer every time someone says something. Yeah.
But yes and no. I love how dismissive undergraduate me was of reading that, this idea of these sacred spaces, and then 25 years later, married to a pastor, talking about these kinds of sacred architectures, and then noticing that I'm studying them. I think there's a sense in which we are talking about that in the way that Krakauer was talking about it, but in the worst possible way, because we're talking about doing sensory overload in them, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about stories tall, like AI-generated tributes to Elvis, right? Which is I think that's Marco Brambia's King Size, which was in the dome, right? It's Sphere. We're not talking about contemplative spaces. So when people start talking about dome, like the potentialities of full dome, they're talking about, we can create something like the New Grange, like experience of watching contemplatively watching a eclipse, or a summer solstice at New Grange in Ireland. That's what the goal is, and what we got is Las Vegas, right?
Didn't they shake it like a basketball as well? Didn't they do? I feel like or baseball or something. There was a sort of, so you're driving, you can see, because it's a dome. They turned it into a. So I don't know. I think I'm curious about the kind of, or querying the idea of it being immersive. Like, what do we mean?
Well, I have no idea. I do know what it means, but the more I thought about what that word means, I've got no.
Oh, it's so complicated.
Well, I suppose then because my before we got into this, your this side of the dome, I was not familiar with the idea of the dome. Whereas Abervoyage is very different. You're very aware and I think this is part of when we were going through the theorists, like left, right, and center here, but we've talked about rhythm before on the podcast and organization of space and the production of space. And you are at Aberford, you are seated like you are watching a concert. So even the organization of all the seats, the dance floor, the live band, and then the projection of ABBA. So there is a live band, but there's also a projection. But it begins and ends in a finite space. Whereas in this case, this sort of domed, this, as you call this, full dome animation and out of the ground as well, like knowing what your research is in. So the capacity of these full dome animations to be, I mean, are they really immersive, or are they too, we don't see the world like this. So it's, I don't know, I'm just trying to get the sense around the way that space is being produced and the impact of, are we having our eyes pressed to create these new experiences?
I mean, there's the reality of how you experience it and how we're being sold it. Whereas being told that it's a sense of presence, what they call third order presence, where the world around you dissolves, and which is not how you experience it, because you're at a concert and you turn to your buddy and say, "Isn't this great?" And you see,
I'm going for a wee. Yeah. And then you get this.
And like, do you want? So I think
It's very reminiscent of rhetorics of fantasy, just to kind of
Classic Sergeant.
drop that, because it's like, you know, it's the whole, my God, you suspend your disbelief, or you just believe in the world. It's like, you don't believe in the world, like you don't believe in Middle Earth, you don't, none of this like, you know, like, it's exactly that.
it is and that's why it's really, really interesting and really fun to talk about this in that context, because understanding you're talking about fantasy doesn't devalue it.
Yeah.
Maybe it does in a promotional context where you're trying to compare it against staying home and watching something on your VR headset.
Sure.
But then you're right back in this idea about collective experience in cinemas. So that, which is oddly enough, is something we all sort of want to encourage. It's like, oh, isn't it great? Like when we had this particular kind of experience that we really enjoyed.
Yeah.
But it's also like, you know, we really are dropping theorist bomb. This I can see the reading list for this episode already.
Yeah.
It's really annoying me how pretentious it looks. But
we also didn't plan. This is just a random collection of thoughts.
But I reject the assumption of like, hey, there's this like public space that's like critical, and like it's like, you know, we all sit around. Yeah, exactly. We all sit around like Parisian coffee houses having conversations about how we're going to enact the next stage of the revolution, but then we accidentally get distracted by cinemas and kind of forget about doing that for 2 hours. Like, even that idea, that privileges a certain form of learning, a certain form of discourse that is inherently embedded within certain value structures that are problematic, or just kind of power seeking and power containing and things like that. I mean, the Pierre Bourdieu, you know,
you were gone off on one now.
you require a certain amount of learning to have look, you know, it sounds like when people are, these are just kind of, you know, cathedrals of distraction, what they would want is some kind of Stan Brakhage, like, you know, high modernist chin stroke coffee, where we all watch the kind of quite challenging art,
This is not
and
a
then
concert.
come out and have an hour and a half debate about how it all went, and that would be good.
But clearly that's what they want. I mean, when they were curating the art for the U2 show, they were picking a lot of established installation pieces. Like there are a lot of things that were previously art pieces in other places. So there's this sense that, like, oh, you're looking at Gerard's like surrender flag, this huge like gas plume as flag surrendering to global warming. I get this notion that they go, oh, some people, the real audience people will know that was an art piece already, and they will contemplate it on a different level.
Yeah.
So there is this pretense towards it being a space of inspiration and a space of like behavioral change, that you will come out transformed after your immersive experience, that you will be more aware of climate change and things like that. And that goes to a long history of institutional cinema. This idea that you're having a virtual. I'm trying to think of now I'm trying to think of the exact quote, and asking for the thing to be cut out. But you're having vicarious experience. That's virtual vicarious experience. And that goes back to exactly those kinds of theoretical frameworks.
Yeah. So I guess my point with that my cliched progressive vision of what a public space looks like is not a space where everyone engages in highbrow intellectual conversation about, basically the point of the public is to butt heads, right? So actually what's good about the public space is that whilst the people in the coffee shop are having the slightly pretentious conversation about things, someone spills coffee on them or interrupts them by playing some, sitting on a tube and having someone play their really annoying music at you whilst being really annoying requires you to be in the world with another person and see another person's viewpoint, vantage point, perspective, bodily presence. The point is to be pissed off in the public. It's to be confronted. It's to be outside your comfort zone. That's why people don't like it. It's scary. You don't want to be. You want to listen to the music you want to listen to and get in your car and drink the Slurpee you want to drink and all. That's why people don't like public transport.
But I would put
you to be with the public.
I would put this in the same space, despite the fact that it's very much not the discourse that it's being put in by people promoting it.
Yeah.
It is in the same space as things like pub cinema and pub church, where people are getting together and disrespecting the content by talking through it and having a messy social experience through it, which is kind of interesting because I maybe take a little bit of heart from the possibility that these technologies can be democratized and can be used in messier ways. So we do see, maybe there's a company called Cosm in the US, which is, as much as I just try to say, make this into a good thing, like making these spaces where you could go and enjoy a wrestling match or a boxing tournament or something which you can't go to because it's not in your city, and order a drink. And that's clearly intended to be like premium cinema replacement. But maybe it gets to be a place where people are allowed to talk through it and enjoy their friends' company at the same time, because there isn't this idea that they're being absorbed in it. So maybe there's a chance that we can have messy, authentic, with all of the air quotes as I can put around them.
Yeah. So really, like what the kind of the proof of the pudding is in the eating, in the sense that it doesn't really matter what the art is intending or is doing, or it's not about what's happening in the dome. It's the fact that there are people in the dome for it to happen to, and whilst it's happening, they're bumping into each other, talking over each other, being people in the world together.
And the question is, can you be transported? Can you be in presence together?
Yeah.
And that sort of hasn't been, because all the theory around this, like Michaela French talks about this, it's like that you have presence of being immersed in the content, and then you have the idea about being immersed in the space, and then the two things come together. It's not clear that you can do that together. And I don't think we can have it both ways. Like, you can't say that the whole reason of going to a concert is to experience music you like with other people, right?
Yes.
You can't say that this is a value add to that and say that the other people around you aren't good for it.
Yeah. Well, it's like the people, people should go to the cinema more, but then when people go to the cinema and like someone's phone goes off, they're really, really annoyed. I mean, so as they should be, because it's really annoying, but that is kind of why you go to the cinema. You go to the cinema so that other people, and unfortunately that is what other people bring to the equation, You don't. If you went to the cinema and everyone was deathly silent, no one said anything, you all sat within 5 meters of each other, you may as well just be watching it in your living room. You need to have that experience. And I think these concerts can create something, but there is this kind of rich sensorium that's uniting them, but it's engulfing them, not necessarily in the same way, but I can see something really positive in that, particularly if it's kind of localized and it's not this kind of like you have to go to either Vegas or Stratford here in London to see these things. If they can be seen in spaces that are more small towny and things like that, then that's good.
I'm just trying to think of sort of, I suppose, their frame of reference. Well, there are two. One is obviously like histories of visual effects, and I'm wondering whether there is immersion and contemplation are not the same thing. So writers on special effects would say that Michelle Pearson, that early special effects invites a contemplative viewing of the special effect, which is very dislocated and very aware. You're not immersed in it, full well what's going on and stuff. But I'm also thinking of those, I can't remember where it is in the world, where you can watch football matches as if you are sitting in Man United's global fan base means that they've erected one of these things in a part of the world where they might go on tour during pre-season, but it's very difficult for the fans to then get to Manchester to watch these games. And thinking about the tribal element to this, it's ritualist, but it's kind of tribal, and you are fans, like the fanatic element to this, and the difference between the sports events maybe and the live concerts. And yeah, so it's a really interesting trend, and it ties absolutely with, I guess, stars. So, because that's the other thing I was thinking about, stars as slightly different for the Aronofsky one than the U2 one, but stars being these kind of counterweights to be like, oh, they're our gateway into these quite complex. We don't really know what is the CGI wizardry that AI, like we don't know what these things are, but stars are these really important. As Sarah Thomas's work, The Star in VR, sort of says these are our entry points into quite complex processes. They are the face of. So it's not the Las Vegas Sphere or the tech, it's U2 so it's just an interesting, the role of stars in managing as intermediaries, I think, with these kind of complex, or football teams, as the star body in that.
I mean, we've talked about these things as animation.
Yes.
Because they are.
Yeah.
Does it matter that they are? Is, I guess, the question. Like, we're talking about it as if, like, so they're animations, so let's not talk about them because they're animations, but should we talk about their animatedness? Is there anything
Well, I do remember when we did the Aber Voyage episode, we hit upon the realization that this was an hour and a half animated film. We were like, oh, so it's not a projection, and it's just an animated film. And so I was just, I'd forgotten that it was animation. It felt like it was something else, but Jenna Eng's work on the post screen is like, no, they're not holograms. ABBA is not a hologram. It's an animated film where you're watching it anyway.
Well, for me, because I like lingering in arguments and then, that I've lost in the past and then eventually winning them.
Are you listening to this, Alex?
Yeah, sure.
As one of the people who thought and felt that puppetry and animation are very closely connected.
He's all over.
Yes, as a listener of the show. So for me, constantly losing that argument, this idea that liveness and animation are coming together here.
Yeah.
That this is performed either by being synchronized with the music or being performed as a musical instrument in the case of Laserium back in this idea of liveness and live animated performance. Not just because that involves having the human back in. I think it was really important that we are able to talk about live performance of animation in this way. And it expands our subject of analysis to do it, which I think is just a useful thing to do to sustain our careers, but also because it's a better way of describing it than the alternative, which would be to have to invent a new word.
So why is that important, he asks provocatively?
Well, is it important to whom? Important to animation scholars as a...
Sure, we can start with them if you like.
Yeah, we like to have jobs.
Yeah, okay. So why is it important to other people?
I think this... I think it goes back to what Chris was saying about collective experience. I think it is a very interesting place to claim animation, to go out and say that that these collective experiences are a dominant form of animation, and to recognize that a lot of the things that we are engaging with and love, like, that can encompass that. Like, the claiming it as live performance is a mechanism to protect it from things that maybe wouldn't be. Like, because this is happening at the same time as other kinds of generating this content by, like, procedural generation or AI. And some that's really interesting. Some of it's like creating these experiences by having them driven by sensors in the environment, which is one way of doing it. But the idea that it's something that could be collaborative in performance and collaborative in taking in. So we have a band that's playing their gig, and then we have the animators and visualization designers and all of these people who are creating this thing that goes in concert with it. Mm-hmm. Of course, none of those people were really credited in any way, right? I mean, they were well compensated, I'm sure. I mean, a lot of them work at ILM in the case of of Las Vegas Sphere. But I want to claim them as animators, and a lot of them want to be claimed as animators. And it's a craft. It's a thing that I think is worthy to claim. But I don't think it's an argument we're going to win. But then again,
Yeah.
I did say that I like losing arguments and coming back and win them eventually.
And then eventually,
So it's animation because it's live performance of a moving image.
And it is traceable back to expanded animation and the way that bodies perform with animation.
Exactly.
It's traceable back to the lightning. What is the lightning sketch if not a performance with, the early lightning sketch cards?
It's traceable back to the most fundamentally things,
Yeah.
the things that are most obviously animation.
Yeah. Or I think when in your work on Jim Henson and puppetry, I think you term it kind of animation adjacent, and so that even if it's not animation in the purest sense, whatever that might be, it's still generative to at least butt it up to the it's generative to listen to someone else's music.
yeah, but I disagree with my past self in that article.
Yeah.
I don't think it is animation adjacent. I think I said that to be mealy-mouthed. I think it's animation.
Yeah.
And I think what I was trying to say there,
Yeah.
perhaps what you're trying to get at, there is something about the insistence of the frame by frame that inherently seems to make animation one step removed from its performance, right? It's the whole, there's this glass wall or this kind of holistic ceiling between the animation as it was made and the animation as it is performed, for want of a better term, because I kind of think a screening of a movie is a performance of a movie, right? So, but because there's this kind of like technological, assumptive, there's something mystic. Maybe it's back to magic again. The magic that we're assuming of animation takes place between the reel is sealed and it's opened again and performed. So it's like it has to be, for some reason it has to be there, which means it can't be in the room while it's being played.
And maybe it can.
And you're trying to say it can be.
I mean, I think I'm the wrong scholar. Like, but I like the fact that you guys have cited a lot of dead guys, and to quote someone who's still alive. So like Javad Kadavi, working on Quill, which is a form of real-time animation production, which has been used a lot in dome environments, like Namu, which was a dome film a couple years ago, was made in Quill. So it was performed in real time and then shown in domes. And I think increasingly there's this idea that you could sustain and help fund animation by letting people watch you make it in VR.
Yeah.
So I certainly claim real-time animation creation as animation in the tradition of agreeing with past you about Sid agree with past you and past me about things like Sid the Science Kid. That the real-time performance doesn't make it not animation.
Oh no, I think that more. I think it's what
I think it more than I did then.
Yeah, that's what I was disagreeing in.
Yeah.
It's not animation adjacent, it's animation.
Yeah, we were so tentative in trying to make these claims before, whether it's for sand animation or puppetry. And now I feel like this technology is proving us right. And that feels good.
But this is the thing about performance as being this odd, like it's very easy to talk about performance in the context of character animation of Disney, and it then becomes slightly more difficult to talk about performance in expanded. Then it becomes really difficult to talk about performance in the case of non-figurative abstract animation. How does performance work there? Then we get to animatronics, which is live, real time. Then we get to filmed puppetry, and now performance is an interesting.
Very soon we're at the question of, okay, so what isn't animation? And like some people will say, all moving images are animation. I don't know if I'm quite ready to go there. So that's where I'm slightly hesitant.
No,
pragmatist in me. No, there is a live action animation distinction, but perhaps we're being a bit too brittle in where it is. But I don't, unless you, I'm not. I think there is that distinction still, but describing what it is difficult.
Yeah. No, because I think performance studies talks of the craft of performance as animation, and animators talk about their craft as performance, which is why I'm interested in overlap between the two. So I'm trying to think of the lever or the thing that maintains that distinction that you said it still exists, even if parts of it are being eroded over time.
I mean, studying this has changed I used to be somewhat one of those people who I think, just for the sake of contrariness, was saying that live action was a kind of animation.
Yeah.
and noticing the idea as I started to look at dome cinema and this claim that something like a planetarium projector, what they call optomechanical animation. So it's moving the lights around on the dome above, but there isn't a filmic projector. There isn't a film screen. It's just holes in a ball. So this idea that yes, it's animation, but it's definitely not cinema.
Yeah.
That really helped me go, okay, that there is animation as this like moving image phenomena that we can look at, we can use as a lens to look at these immersive experiences, but that there's definitely things that's not. Like in that respect, robotics are definitely not animation.
Yeah.
But only in that sense, right? So it's not it doesn't take us to it doesn't take us to that space necessarily. So it's one of those wonderful things that just like helps with a bunch of things and it creates a bunch more problems.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why we keep doing the podcast.
Which is
I suppose.
exactly, yeah. Okay, so Tim, this project on immersive live experiences, will there be outputs for it? Are there outputs? Where can listeners find them? Bear in mind, in this wonderful temporal world of podcasting, about 50% of people listening to this might the next 5-10 years. So is there journal articles? Are there books? Are there...
Well, yeah, unusually for me, this is a productive area of studies. So a chapter on dome experiences will be in the Encyclopedia of Animation Studies.
Great.
Coming out hopefully very soon.
Yeah.
This methodology of looking at sacred spaces and sacred practices is central to what Pastor Aaron Jones and I do on the Spirited Animation podcast. It's not the only thing. So, for instance, that whole conversation about is Clark Kent or Superman better, we use those sacred practices to say that that Lego Batman is the best Batman because he goes to therapy, or perhaps might go to therapy. So the idea of using sacred spaces as a way of understanding animation is absolutely something that has become really fundamental to what we're doing, and people can check that out at spiritedanimation.com.
We'll link to that.
Tune in. There'll be more.
Brilliant.
Terrific. Thanks, Tim, for a really wonderful conversation about lots of things, but immersive live experiences and lots more to think about.
Yes.
I've got like a bunch of other dead white guys I didn't mention in this conversation.
Yeah, but I love
what a
that
shame.
you connected my research to a bunch of important scholars that I always forget to do. So I appreciate that.
Yes.
If people want more, as I said, there's a footnote on things like Aura that we've covered on the podcast before.
Yeah. Obviously, our Abba Voyage.
Our Abba Voyage episode is all in the archive for our podcast. You can find that wherever you download your podcasts or at fantasy-animation.org. You can find us on social media at FanAnim Research, FANANIM Research, and you can use that same handle, that's FANANIM Research at gmail.com to email us with any comments, feedback, or suggestions for footnotes for forthcoming episodes.
Yes.
Otherwise, that's plenty enough for today, I think. We'll see you next time.
Bye.